the most competitive, willful player that I think I've witnessed in my lifetime in terms of his ability to bring his team to those heights. And I think when you think about a series and knowing the importance of them getting that game, and obviously we see the end result. I don't know that does a broken hand affect his ability to play in those games?
I mean, he still played well.
He did.
He didn't play transcendently well, but he still played well.
But at the end of the day, Golden State's better than Cleveland. At the end of the day, I think we all were hoping for a better series. But I'd have no problem whatsoever if a player did that. I think that we're pushing for, in light of that, we're pushing for all the boards that are in locker rooms to have a cushion on them. I know I just hit one the other night that I still have a bruise. Why don't they make these things softer? These things are going to happen. So,
how's the hand?
Sore.
Will you be on the injury report?
Dumb. I used to get home and I'd have bruises on my wrists and knuckles, and why am I sore? And they're like, "Well, Cheryl, you did hit the table. You did it, so can't help it. That's just." I told my mom the other night, I said, that's my dad in me. I don't accept losing very well.
Yes, sir.
Got a little bit of a different question for you. I want to ask you a question about coaching tree. You've heard about Bill Parcells' coaching tree and Greg Popovich coaching tree. You're on a par with those people. Do you think about that? And have you got some coaches that are ready to move on to leave the organization, but maybe get a new opportunity?
Yeah, I had a unique situation for...
Grab a hat or a
thanks for the
t-shirt
question. I had a unique situation for a long time. I have two assistants for, I believe, 7 years, Jim Peterson and Shelley Patterson, who literally loved their job as assistant coaches and didn't want to be head coaches. And that's an uncommon thing. I will say that James Wade, who came into our organization last year when Jim Peterson decided to focus full time on FSN and vacationing, that we won a championship last year, and James Wade interviewed for head coaching jobs, and so he's the next person that I believe we remain successful that will get an opportunity. That is important. It's for us to be able to position assistant coaches. I don't like to lose them. I think one of the reasons why we were successful for so long was because we did indeed have continuity on the staff. So that was really, I think, meaningful to us. Jim Peterson was actually up for the Connecticut job. So that's been, I think, 3 years now. I pushed Jim really hard to take that job. I had to, beg him to interview. And he said, I don't know, Cheryl, all the stuff you go through, I don't think I want to do all that. And I said, you need to do this. His wife, Tika, pushed him really, really hard just to go interview. I saw that as the next job of good players that you could really do well there. And at the end of the day, Jim Peterson said he enjoyed our players so much and being a part of Maya Moore's legacy here in Minnesota. And this is home for him, and obviously the FSN job might have had a little bit to do with it as well. I love the coaching tree. I hope that we're able to continue to have quality people here that want to move on and be head coaches. At the same time, it is difficult.
Good question. Thank you. We still have the mic open if anybody else wants to ask a question. It struck me, Kenny Smith is considering leaving a very lucrative, pretty easy job, TNT, sitting there laughing with Charles, to go be maybe a head coach. I don't think it's going to happen, but he considered it. I mean, your job is so much harder than any media jobs. I mean, would you recommend somebody like Kenny Smith leave that surefire gig to go to an uncertain future as a head coach?
I think something like that, you could always go back to TV. He'll always have that as an opportunity. So I think if he's got an itch for that he should do that. And he needs to understand how hard it is when you are. And Jim Peterson went through this when I first had him on staff. He had very much a more of a TV view of things. And then he got into the coaching, and he thought, holy cow. And so that actually made him a better TV person, a better analyst. And, you understand that when a player does something, that's not what we said in the timeout. Saying, why did the coach tell him to do it? No, that's not what we said in the timeout. We said something different. So a different vantage point, understanding the schemes and that sort of thing, I think was helpful. So I think that Kenny will go through a lot in managing people, things that you don't have to do when you're in TV. Lindsay Whalen is a great example. Lindsay Whalen is playing, had a high level play for all those years, and then goes into TV. And she said, "Oh my goodness, is this easy? This is a great way to stay in the game. Love the game. You can be at shoot-arounds with the players, that sort of thing. But you can drink beer and eat good food and and do all that." She really enjoyed that. I suspect that he'll do it. Now, Steve Kerr did the same thing. But I think Steve had that in him. And does Kenny Smith have it in him? I could see where he does, but it's just not an easy profession. And he might go sprinting right back to that TV job. I'd want to get away from Charles and Shaq if I were him.
You would or wouldn't?
I would.
But, all he has to do is sit there and laugh. He's a human laughter.
It is a great show.
And he's a great analyst. Yeah. I'm not demeaning him as an analyst, but really, most of the show is laughing at the silly things that Charles and Shaq say, which is great. By the way, I'm going to date myself. I covered Shaquille O'Neal as a high school player in Texas.
Wow.
He went up against Thomas Hill in the Class A AA finals or something in Austin. That was
I stood next to Shaquille O'Neal. We were at UNLV for a college tournament. He was playing at LSU. I don't know what year he was. And when the gentleman walked by, and I thought, those are the biggest pair of shorts I've ever seen on a person. It was just, I thought, good Lord, this man is huge. So,
yes. Was anybody waiting to ask a question? Please.
Okay. So a lot of people, we haven't started off the year coming off of a championship the way that maybe expected, that sort of thing. And a lot of people have kind of counting us out. There's a lot of schedule left to play, a lot of good games, a lot of stuff can happen.
Who are those people counting us out?
Well,
are they in this room?
That one person on Twitter who was throwing some shade earlier about getting covered. But everyone just beats somebody up sometimes. But just people that are kind of commenting, even players in the league, about that we haven't started off strong, and they're kind of counting us out for going and really anywhere with the season. What do you say about that?
Well, I think the same thing we would say when people say the opposite, which is counting us in. We don't pay attention to it when people are saying, hey, you're going to win the championship, and so we're not going to pay attention when people say we're not going to win the championship. I think that the rule applies, again, on both sides of it. Never too high, never too low. I think that's really important. I think it's easier to manage the not too high than it is to manage the not too low. Again, highly competitive people. But at the end of the day, our job is no different than what it was when we're 6-3 versus 3-6, in that you have to focus on the day to day. And once the one day is over, you have to let it go, whether you won or lost, and then you have to move on to that next day and try to be the best you can that day. And so it's no different for us. I will tell you that I have taken exception to not so much the shade, that I expect, because I think people would like for me to go away on Twitter, and the things that I stand for. That's how you know you've made it, right? When you get the trolls out. But I take exception to some of the behaviors of our opponents. Our players are gonna hear from me on that on Wednesday, in that we've had some players do some things to us that I find to be mighty disrespectful, and I want us to have a response to that. And so whether it's a player posting something on Instagram with regard to one of our players, whether it's a player blocking a shot and stepping over us and yelling at us, whether it's beating us and acting like you won the championship, there's a number of things that I think that have happened that I'm saying, all right, it's time we have a reaction to this. We've dominated the league for 7 years. And we treated every opponent with respect, every single one of them. I didn't say we liked every single opponent, but we treated them with respect. And I'll be darned if I'm going to have a case where we're going to be treated some kind of way. So our players are going to hear about that. And I think, it's unacceptable. And then I think here's the reality, too. We have had a historic run. Historic by a long shot of a 7-year history that we didn't average. 20 wins is oftentimes the mark of a good team. This team averaged 25 wins for 7 years. Our worst season was 22 wins, right? So that is a hard thing now for us to achieve, right? To just, we're all, we're at a place. You guys are watching the games. You see it's harder for Lindsay and Simone to keep up with some of these younger players. That's just real. We have to try to help them. We got to tweak our schemes. We'll find a way. But at the end of the day, if you all are going to compare us to our past years, we're not going to be able to meet those expectations. And so we want to be realistic about where we are now and compare ourselves to the rest of the teams in the league. We think we still can be one of the best teams. We have to turn it around now, and it's not going to happen just because we're saying that we'll be okay. It's going to happen because we're going to get to work this week and have 3 days of practice and understand the passion that we have to play with collectively to win basketball games. And then obviously we need all of you. This is a time that you would need your fans now more than ever. You can be critical. That's okay, but just be there for us and let us hear you. Because if you're passionate, you're going to be critical. That's okay because you care, and we appreciate that. Thank you. Hi.
Oh, hi, MJ. Good to see you.
Are you guys Twitter friends?
Yes, we are.
Yeah. I actually called him a ringer, and he said that's the best piece of sarcasm.
A ringer?
But if you saw my athletic skills, you would know that I'm not a ringer either. But as someone who's been in the business world, I find you very inspirational as far as equality and just doing the right thing. So on the days that I get discouraged, I would listen to your podcast. So how do you get the business guys that are about my age to say, I want someone who's experienced who does the right thing? Because oftentimes, like someone like me, I'm shoved aside. They'll hire someone who's 23 years old out of school, and then they're on their cell phone all day at the office. So how do you find inspiration in your field on the days that you're like, this isn't going well, or do you pull your team together or your coaches? How do you get the internal and the external inspirations to kind of move out of a rut?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Thanks, MJ.
Yeah. So the idea that never too high, never too low typically applies to players. Not to this coach. I'm gonna get pretty low, but I have a tremendous support system, and I get to come home to this beautiful, amazing little boy who expects me, to be his mom and to be happy and play with him, because. His thing that he says is, Mom, we didn't win the trophy. That's just winning a game. That's just not winning the big thing. We didn't win the trophy, or if he wins a race, he understands winning and losing. But he doesn't want his mom to bring that home. So I feel a big responsibility to him with that. I've gotten better through the years. I think with age, you have better perspective, in that, you don't have a choice, but you got to keep fighting. You have to keep fighting, and you have to. I think I'm a big problem solver. And so the first thing, my comfort zone is to go dive into video and statistics and say, okay, this is what's happening. I mean, I literally, to the Connecticut game, I've gone through every single possession and said, okay, play call here, Maya dribbled up her foot here, just kind of what can we fix? What can we get better? I think at the end of the day, making sure that the lows maybe that I experience as a coach, that I don't come back the next day and be contagious in a negative way. That's huge. At the end of the day, we perform the best when we are having fun and competing together. And so I have to kind of, dig out and be all that I can be for the players the next time that we're together. I'm going to say I'm not perfect. I'm a driver. And if I don't like the way it's going, I'm going to let them know that I don't like the way that it's going. But we have so much respect for each other, that there's trust. And so I will just say that I think the fight is worth fighting. So whether it's in your day or in our day, the fight is worth fighting. And you got to have good people around you during that fight.
Do you have a question?
Hi there.
Hey. So I work for one of the advertising agencies that represents the Lynx. It's a great honor. Appreciate it.
What's the name of the agency?
True Media.
Cool.
And so I have kind of a broader question. Maybe you can help me solve. How do you think the WNBA should market itself 5 years from now? How do you expand the brand from the core audience that's obviously so engaged? You see a lot of people here that are, but what's the next step? How do we expand the audience? What can we do with the brand to continue the growth